Hey everyone, it's Alan over at Cobblers Plus, and thank you for joining us. And today we're going to be working on a pair of Chippewa boots. I don't think I've done a video on Chippewa yet or talked about them too much, so come join us and check out what we're doing. So thank you for joining us on our recraft video today. Like I mentioned, we're going to be working on a pair of Chippewa boots, and I haven't done too much videos or talks about Chippewa ever, just because there are other brands out there that tend to always kind of get the spotlight, mainly things like Red Wing and Thorogood, which I've done videos on. But Chippewa in particular, it's another great brand. I mean, this one here in particular, it's made in the US as well, and it's a phenomenal boot, so definitely a well-worthy boot to do some work on. On this pair today, we're going to be working on changing out the soles on them. They've got this Vibram Christy sole, which is a great sole, but the gentleman requested he wanted to basically do the same thing, but he wanted it in black, and he's seen one of my previous videos doing it on a pair of Thorogoods, adding over top this Vibram Sierra sole as well in black. And basically, I know some of you are saying, why would you do that? It's a sole on top of a sole. Well, you do it for a number of reasons. One, the Christy sole in particular, it's a great sole, but it's still a form of crepe. So basically they take rubber and other compounds, mix them together, and instead of compressing them like they would with this sole here, they add air pockets to it. So it almost makes it like a sponge, in other words. So it's great for cushioning and everything, and it seems like over the years Vibram has added more rubber compound or made it a little bit denser, so it seems like it holds up significantly better than what it used to about what would I say, 10-15 years ago roughly. But you know, some people still, this is just not enough of a sole for traction, but they still want that comfort level, because this one is definitely more comfortable than a number of other soles out there, whether it's from Vibram or other brands too. So this gentleman wants the comfort of this sole, but he wants the traction and durability of this sole here, because this rubber, if we go with the Olympia model, which is the one with the full heel on it, it's still a solid rubber piece that has been compressed and molded and everything. So it's a lot harder. It's not quite as cushioned. So that's why you would combine it. Another thing that a lot of you may say, and a significant amount of cobblers would say, is why won't you just take crepe? Now there's crepe like this orthopedic grade crepe. We use this for orthopedic lifts when somebody has one leg shorter than the other. We do it for a number of build-ups as well when something is unleveled, and that's an option as well. We tend to prefer to stock the harder crepe materials because there is a soft version. Problem with the soft version, it tends to collapse. Even with a 100-pound person, basically it still has a tendency to collapse a lot quicker. But even this dense one here, it still has a tendency to collapse a lot quicker than what Vibram has with the Christy sole. So you could go with this route, definitely, of doing a wedge sole. Basically, I've done that on a few other pairs. Actually, I've done videos on them, and you know, it's a great option, definitely. But you know, for a little bit additional cost, you have that option to go with this route, doing a Christy sole and then putting something over top of it. That's just an option. It does obviously come in at an additional cost, because it's basically two separate full soles going onto one pair of boots, and there is more material in the cost of that entailed with it. And you know, these sheets here, they're a little more cost effective, but you know, you get that additional durability aspect with the Vibram sole. So just to kind of answer those questions, there are a number of ways to be able to do it, obviously, but it really comes down to, what do you prefer? You know, some people actually want to do crazy things, you know. Some of you have seen me put JR soles and then over top of that put a rubber protective sole over it. Hey, if the person that owns those boots or shoes wants that done, by all means, they could do it. There's nothing wrong with it. There are certain added benefits. The JR sole is going to be holding up for a long period of time on its own, but adding a little bit of a Vibram protective sole is going to help with some traction and extra layer of durability too. Again, it's completely up to the individual who owns the pair. Don't start dogging everybody and saying, why would you do that? Why would you do that? It's the same thing as far as, you know, why are you replacing the soles on those? Those are brand new soles. Each individual has their own personal opinion on what they want for their shoes. They know what's comfortable for them. They know what they want. So let them have it, you know. I would actually do the same exact thing as what this gentleman is doing, the Vibram Christy sole, and an Olympia sole over top of that. There's nothing wrong with it. I like that option. I've done it a number of times. I've done this before even this YouTube channel existed. I've done the same thing. A lot of people actually like it. So, you know, whether you're in construction, you do outdoor work, you do hiking in those boots or shoes, and you want that option done, or whether you do them for just, you know, everyday wear or casual wear, it's an awesome option. You cannot deny it. You cannot deny having a Vibram Christy sole with a Vibram Sierra sole over top of it isn't a cool thing. Then you're not a shoe enthusiast. I'm sorry, but that's a pretty cool way of doing things, that's for sure. All right, anyways, before I keep rambling about that, let's continue on with the boots. So at this point, I put on some thinner around where the welt area is to deactivate adhesives. Now, there are some shoes that we do that with, some that you don't do that with. It depends on the upper. This upper, thankfully, is an oiled leather, so it's heavily infused with certain fats and oils from animals and certain vegetation as well. So adding turpentine, thinner, or acetone around those edges to deactivate the adhesive, it's not going to cause any form or harm to the upper. We're going to be conditioning these and cleaning them up regardless anyways. At the end of it, we'll be conditioning them. During the process, I like to add a little bit of cleaning opportunity to it because everything's open. I'll spray it down with desalter and stuff. But let me grab my knife here, which disappeared on. Got it. And we're just gonna basically cut off the sole because these are Goodyear welted. So we're gonna cut off, let me actually show you a little bit closer. So we've got the welt here where the Goodyear welt is, that brown edge. There's a thin layer here. This is the midsole right there, and the midsole typically is glued to the welt and the interior of this boot, and then afterwards it's stitched on, and then the Christy sole is glued on over top of that. And so we're going to be using this knife to separate the welt from the midsole, and we're going to at the same time slice through those stitches there so that we can end up removing everything. Now, there are options to be able to obviously remove just the sole and leave the midsole intact, and then just glue the new sole over top. That is an option, but sometimes it doesn't work out because a number of gentlemen who actually own boots like this, if they're doing construction work in them, they tend to dig their toes into the floor a lot because they crouch down and got to get down on the floor or something, and they wear out that welt so badly. Or if they have like some kind of toe cover, there's no real access to be able to restitch a new welt on there unless we re-welt it basically, which we can definitely do as well if you need the welt replaced. But the cost definitely goes up on it. So if a gentleman comes in and requests, I just really need to be able to get by for another couple of months before either my company buys a new pair or I buy a new pair, or until I find an alternative because this model is no longer available. So sometimes, yes, we do have to do that route. Even though we don't like it, you know, we still have to be able to do that. And we can't just turn a person away in need and say, nope, we're only going to do it the right way. I'd prefer to do it the right way and replace the welts at that point and so on. But it doesn't always turn out that way. So with the Chippewas here, sorry about all the squeaking on this thing. we have the obviously the midsole on there, and midsoles actually come in a variety of different types and options. Now, the ones that we tend to use, they're composite type material, so it's got a little more rubber in it. It's a little bit harder and denser, which durability wise it actually holds up significantly longer. But like on the Chippewas, what they're using is a softer type material. It's almost the same material as what this Vibram Christy sole is, so it's a form of blown crepe, which it works, but it's a pain. Like right now for me to cut through it, it's not fun right now. So now that I got past this point, because these do have this wedge piece right here, it's almost like having a heel rend there, but we're gonna have to save that piece there, possibly, if we can. If we can't, I'll replace it with a different piece of midsole material and kind of build it up as a wedge, just like they did before. So let me mess around a little bit with this one, because it's gonna take some effort, and trying to show everybody me doing it actually ends up being a little bit hazardous, mainly because I'm trying to get the certain angles to let the camera see it and everything, or whatever it may be, and this knife will slip off, and I have a habit of stabbing one of my fingers in these types of scenarios, and I really don't want that on video, okay, of me stabbing myself. It's happened before. It actually happened recently with another pair. I got distracted by someone talking, or maybe I was doing a video, I can't remember. I had to just stop it completely. I was like, oh no, I gotta go bandage this up. Anyways, let me go ahead and take off the rest of it, and I'll let you see the end. All right, I might as well just let you guys take a look and see what it looks like just coming apart. So at this point, typically I like to just put the knife in, and a lot of cobblers don't like doing that, just because if they accidentally angle the knife wrong, they'll accidentally slice the welt or do something else. I am very comfortable with that. I have no problem with it, except for when I get along to this type of soft crepe. As you can tell, let me show you real quick right here where I started slicing it through the way I usually do. It cut into the midsole a little bit, which is no problem for the midsole itself because we're getting rid of it anyways. But you know, with the softer material, I do start to get a little more concerned about potentially slicing the welt. So I have to basically do this and pretty much pull the sole back and start slicing through the midsole. And basically I'm actually cutting pieces, as you can tell right here. There's a lot more now. Start cutting into the midsole a little bit in some areas. Sometimes it cooperates and I'm able to pull it back and just cut the stitch, but this soft crepe stuff, I really don't like it. That is, I'll definitely have to say, one of the downsides with the Chippewas is that there are certain materials I'm not too happy with. But then again, there are certain materials with Red Wing, with Thorogood, and a number of other brands out there too that I don't like. So you can't have perfection. You want perfection, it's going to come in at a bit of a steeper cost. So in order to keep costs down, a lot of these companies, they do cut certain corners. Now, one of the other ones here, as we can tell, there is foam inside. Now, typically there's cork a lot of times in builds like this. The cork is designed to fill in the void here because the Goodyear welt is stitched to this gimming right here. And as you could tell, there's a bit of a void here. There's like a gap, in other words, just sitting there. And so when you're wearing the boot or shoe, you're going to feel that a little bit. And so you have to fill it in somehow. And there are a number of ways of being able to fill it in. Foam, there are felt materials, leather as well, and cork. Cork is our preferred method because cork is great insulation. Once it molds to your foot, is great support. It wicks away moisture very nicely, and it holds up fairly well. The second option that I would go for would probably be leather. There are a handful of cobblers, not too many, there are a handful of cobblers that swear by using a leather inlay right here. Only problem with the leather, unfortunately, it takes a lot longer to break in. And typically those leather inlays, they will hold up longer, obviously, than the cork would. obviously. But by the time you really break in those leather inlays, because they start compacting so much, the fiber structure takes so long to form to your foot. But by then, it's almost time to actually replace that, even if you've resoled it time and time in between, because you can reuse that same piece and just allow it to mold to your foot. By then, there's a good chance that that leather piece may need to end up being replaced. Plus, the break-in period is a lot rougher, and the other thing, it doesn't wick away moisture or insulates quite as well as cork does. Cork obviously will degrade quicker, but it tends to start degrading right about the time when it's time to anyways start replacing that sole. Obviously, that's if you are taking at least some precautions, like not dumping a ton of water in there and into your boot, or dunking your boot into the water and just letting it sit there and then drastically having them dry out in the sun. Those kind of drastic changes will obviously degrade the cork. But if you get it wet just from normal walking and everything, from normal wear and tear, that cork tends to hold up for a fair period of time. But when you use felt or foam like this, that's the cheapest option. I don't even want to say that it's in one of my categories as far as being a third or fourth place. It doesn't even rank, just because it's foam. You know, it's foam, it's felt, it's going to be cushioned a little bit more when you put them on for the first time right out of the box, which is cool sounding. Yes, obviously it sounds great, but if you're looking at long term, and most of us cobblers, that's the way we look at it, is you get a pair of boots or shoes, we want to see it last long term. Keep it out of landfills, have that upper broken into your foot. Basically that entire boot is already like shaped to your foot, and it's like having your own custom boots forever, pretty much, just because they get recrafted and you can get creative with the type of sole options you go with too, especially with a Goodyear welt like this as well. But anyways, that kind of gives you an idea of what the inside of it looks like here. So also underneath here, this is kind of the core, the heart of the boot or shoe. This is what they start out with right here. At least with the Chippewas, some brands do it a little bit differently, but when they have a wooden or a plastic last like this that's molded, they start out with this as the base. They start building the shoe or boot off of that. They stretch it over the last and everything. Imagine like this one's fully rounded, and they start stretching the leather over it. They secure it directly to this base area here. Some companies use a leather. It looks like Chippewa is using a fiberboard type, which we're seeing very commonly in boots and shoes that are under that $300 mark on average. I mean, there are some that are out there that are pushing $600-700 as well, that have it as an option too. It's not bad, but it's not great. Leather is going to be definitely the better option to go for that base, because that leather, as I mentioned, having as an inlay here is a bit problematic because it has to be replaced. Now, if you have leather as the base, as the core of the shoe, it's typically visible on the inside here. It could be cleaned, sanitized. It's a little bit easier to maintain, and the break-in period is a little bit easier on the foot as well. So when you have the leather as your core base right here, it's going to hold up for a long period of time. It's a pain to replace, but it usually doesn't need to. I've seen boots and shoes come through here that are really old that had that construction and they didn't need it replaced. So, thought I'd point that out. But anyways, moving on real quick. So this is that brown wedge I was talking about right here. They've got it starting from right over here all the way to the back of the heel. It's just like an extra wedge layer. In other words, because of the way these are angled and everything, they need that extra bit. So from the look of it and everything, they used a fiberboard obviously on it, and it just looks like it's going to be more problematic trying to take it off and save it. So we're going to replace that with a composite material like we're doing for the midsole, which will be a little bit of an upgrade, in other words. So let me go ahead and take apart the other boot, and we'll Alright everyone, so we're over at the workbench again. As you saw, that we were sanding out some of this area here, kind of clear it up, and we went through our stitch pulling machine. Well, it's kind of an attachment on one of our shine machines, but that allows us to pluck the stitches a little bit quicker and easier. There are some boots and shoes that we don't do it on, especially certain exotics or delicate leathers, or if it's a really light color, just because it can potentially leave a certain burn mark, in other words. But a heavily oiled leather boot like this, it's not an issue, and if it does cause any kind of issues, it's very easy to fix up. But as you can tell, it didn't end up pulling all the thread on me. This area here ended up getting a little more stuck, it looks like, so I'm gonna have to grab a little tool like that and just go through and just kind of start plucking them like that, and grab one of my pliers, if I could even find them, these guys, and quite literally just pull them. It's very time consuming, obviously, but we want to make sure all the stitches are pulled. I can't stand leaving the old stitches behind. It's a frustrating thing, and I know that there are some who don't pluck stitches, don't pull them. I should know. My old man doesn't do it, unfortunately, so he just doesn't like doing it. I don't know why. Don't ask me. I've asked him. He has no response to me. He just says, I don't like it. There's no point. Well, in reality, there is a point, and it's a must. But hey, every cobbler's a little bit different, I guess you can say. Anyways, I'm going to go through and pull out all these threads and stitches all around, and afterwards we're going to fill in this void here that is a must always, and we like to use the cork here. So we're going to be using our pre-cuts pieces like this and just kind of positioning them in and just filling it all in completely. If we need to, once I get the first layer in, if we need to do a second layer, because these are a predetermined thickness of 1/8 of an inch, so I want to make sure that it's filled in and fully flush. If I have to, I'll go ahead and do a second layer basically, but we'll see how that goes. From the look of it, we might get away with one layer, maybe need to do two, at least in the ball of the foot area, but we'll see how that goes. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and do that, sand it nicely, and then get the midsole ready to glue up on there, and we'll see you back in just a minute. Alright everyone, so we're back here with these. I did do a double layer of cork in there, let it cure for a little while. Now, obviously we sanded everything and pulled the stitches on it. At this point, we're going to go ahead and put on the midsole, which I'm taking it out of the oven so it's nice and warm. So the midsole is basically 1/8 of an inch material like that. So there are some thicker versions as well available too, but that one only comes in black. So if you're wanting a different color, they don't really have too many options when it comes to the thicker ones. But what the midsole is for is basically what we're stitching the sole to, or stitching to the boot, in other words, so that we can adhere the sole a little more effectively and efficiently. That way recrafting is a little bit better and easier on that. Also, it acts a little bit more like a stiffener, because you do want to remove some of the strain that goes to the toes, and a lot of these rubber soles, sometimes they're a little too flexible on top of that. So if you ever see a pair of shoes or boots that do have a midsole on them, some companies do that to add a little bit of resistance on the toes, so that removes some of that strain when your toe is bending. If you don't have a midsole on there, your toes kind of bend, and that's a little bit too much pressure. But they don't really add too many midsoles on a number of shoes, at least shoes mainly, some boots as well if they're lower cut, because again, that resistance will kind of press too much and that boot will slide off. So typically you'd find a midsole on most Goodyear welted models that are lace up, they have a buckle or Velcro, whatever it may be, but there are some that are also slip-on, but typically the ones that are a little bit higher up will have the midsole, just because there's a lot more material that can prevent that heel from sliding around too freely. But anything that secures or latches or laces will have a midsole on it if it's a rubber sole typically. The other thing, obviously, like I mentioned, the recraftable side of it makes it a lot easier, a lot more functional and better to be able to recraft them afterwards, because we still have to be able to cut through the stitches and everything. And when you have a softer material, whether it's crepe like this or something else like that, if you glue it straight onto there, that's too thick to stitch, one, and two, trying to pull that off, you're going to cause some damage to the boots sometimes. That's why a number of shoes and boots out there that are molded, there are limitations on how many times they can be resoled, and sometimes they can't even really, at least functionally, be resoled or recrafted or cost effective either. Efficient. Why do I keep saying effective? I don't know. But anyways, that's kind of the breakdown of midsole. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and stick this onto the press, press out all the areas all around, do the welt press so everything sticks nicely together, and let them cool off and cure for a little bit before we finally stitch it. Now, typically you can trim them beforehand, and that's doable, but I actually use a hooked blade like this right here and tend to cut off all around as close as possible, allowing me to be able to stitch these midsoles without needing to actually sand them or trim them or do anything else with them. The only other thing before I stitch them, I am going to sand out this just a little bit more to rough it up. There are a couple of smooth spots here and there. I don't know if the camera will catch it, but if I move it back and forth, it's just this little area where from the factory these midsoles didn't have enough sanding, in other words, so we don't want that to turn into an air pocket that might end up squeaking or may be an issue when it comes to the adhesive sticking properly. Anyways, I'll go ahead and get that taken care of, trim it all up, and we'll be back here in just a little bit. It's the end of the day here again, so I'm gonna let these cure overnight before I continue on too much with them. And I like to do that a lot of times because since these are an oiled boot, a lot of times those oils start to be absorbed into the welt area, and those oils, they do like to counter adhesives just a little bit, even though this adhesive we have here does have a solvent in there that's a little bit stronger, so it'll allow the adhesive to bind nicely, but I still like to let it cure for a little while before really doing anything else, just as a precautionary measure. So I'll go ahead and get going on them, and we'll see you back for me tomorrow, for you guys a few seconds. So we'll see you in a Alright everyone, so you had seen me sand down the edges to kind of make it a little bit straighter around here, but I really got to make sure to do that beforehand always, in order to be able to level, well, kind of level, but measure out the leveling on it basically. I measure out the thickness of this sole here and the original, because as I mentioned, there was going to be this one piece right here, that little wedge, but because we're doing it in such a manner, we actually don't really need that piece anyways. It's just strictly the midsole at that point, and we're gonna compensate for that little bit of difference using that Christy sole, which is a better thing because that little piece right here, that's that fiberboard material, which is not great. So yeah, but anyways, I measured everything out. It was at the back of the heel that I would need to leave behind 3/4 of an inch with the midsole, and at the ball of the foot it was a total of half inch. What was it? In other words, I needed to leave about 5/8 of an inch total. Was it 5/8? I just Just slipped my mind. I finished marking it up and everything. 1/4 of an inch. That's what it was. 1/4 of an inch with the midsole. So that'd be, let's see, yeah, 1/4 of an inch without the welt that I have to leave behind at the ball of the foot. So I ended up marking around so you can see with that silver pen. Typically I use a regular pen, but in order for everyone to be able to see, I did the silver around the edges. Sorry, got interrupted, but already forgot where I left off at. So at this point, basically, I'm gonna take this over to the sander and just sand all that out. Obviously, after I sand it out, I'm going to be checking for any kind of pitch or height discrepancy along with the sole and see how everything's going before I officially start getting ready to put the sole on. So it's going to take a little bit of back and forth, in other words. So at least I'll show the first portion of sanding, and we'll kind of go from there. I'm not going to be able to record all of that. Neighbors are doing some remodeling and stuff, but I'm not going to be able to go back and forth on the recording of me sanding it, measuring it, sanding it, measuring it, and just it's going to take way too much time. So I'll at least let you check out, see what the process of sanding actually is. It takes a little while. I'm gonna have to change out the belt on my sander, make sure it's a fresh new one so that it can actually grind through this efficiently. Otherwise, the one that I have on there is a little worn down and it's gonna take forever to sand it, basically. So let's move on over to the machines. All right, everyone, so we had a little bit of a hiccup. I left these boots all marked up and ready for me to take care of, got them ready to sand, and I had to leave them, and one of our guys ended up grabbing them when I wasn't here at the shop, and he did my work for me. I apologize. I really wish I had been able to show you how we grind it down, at least showed you the markings and everything like that, but he pretty much finished them out for me. I just did a few final touches on the leather uppers and the edging and all that kind of stuff. But there you have it. They're done. I'm, again, really sorry. You guys got to at least see some of the fun parts, which is, remove all the stitches, remove all the old sole, the interior of them and everything. So you got to see at least the core things that are needed on it. Now, as far as the finishing work, and this is something I don't like doing too long on the videos, just because it does make the videos very long, and especially with my long talking and everything and explaining everything in detail. I know some of you like it, some of you can't stand it. I'm talking about out there, Mr. Mark. He probably won't even see this, but anyways, so at this point what I ended up doing is, since the edging on here where the leather is kind of neutral and everything, I ended up going for the Saphir Cream here because it's got a little more dye pigment. Typically I don't like using something that has waxes like this in there, but when I tried it first with the oiled leather cream, it just did not have enough pigment to really penetrate in here, and I didn't want to varnish it. Varnishing it is on the wheel where it melts the waxes in there, and we don't want to do that because, again, there's oil in this shoe significantly, and including the welt. The welt has a lot of oil buildup in it, so a lot of these things will not penetrate, including wax. It just settles over top. It looks nice for a little while, but just envision it cracking after a period of time. You're gonna be bending right here in this area where you're walking, where it bends. It's gonna crack and just fall off, or just stay cracked looking and just looks terrible. So I gone ahead and used the Saphir Cream because it does have a little concentration of wax than the Pomadier Cream, if you're wondering, which is the other one from Saphir, which is the kind of higher end one, I guess you can call it. But that was why I didn't go for the Pomadier Cream. So it was just like a dark brown number 5 that I did for it. Buffed that up, and then afterwards I'd gone ahead and gone through with the oiled leather cream, also nicknamed Greasy Cream. Some of you, I have noticed, don't actually know this even exists. If you are familiar with Saphir products, you guys are using the little small bottles of the Saphir oiled leather cream, again nicknamed Greasy Cream, but there is a Midsole version of it that's not listed too often, it turns out, but we do stock it. So I grabbed the brown one. This is the medium brown number 37, And before I did that, I did sand out a few areas just very lightly by hand with some 220 grit. If you want to check out a video, I'm actually going to be, I haven't got one recorded at the time of the recording of these boots, but I'm sure I'll have one up here before the video of these. So if you're watching this now, just go back and check on our daily posts. I really am trying to get around to doing a video on oiled leathers such as this, so you can definitely check it out. I didn't do it on this pair of boots just because this pair of boots is already going to be featured in 2 videos. It's going to be this one that we're doing here right now, and another one where I talk about the Chippewa brand. So that's just the one, it's just the boot that I have at the shop right now at the time of this recording, and I could do that video. There is a neutral version as well. I was thinking about using that a little more around the edges here just to be cautious. I did in the welt area here, but yeah, the medium brown was to help restore a lot of that color pigment and bring that back as well. So now at this point I just gotta throw some laces in there. I'm trying to decide if I should throw something fun in there or just go medium brown, but I think there's not much else in here, so medium brown might actually blend very nicely. If I end up throwing some kind of fun lace in here, it kind of sticks out just a little too much in like a weird bad way, I guess you can say, but we'll throw some new laces in there regardless. So let me go ahead and do that, and I'm done. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. If you are wanting us to do anything on your footwear or other leather goods, feel free to contact us. All of our information is on our website, CobblersPlusCO. You could stop by if you're local here in the Denver area. If you're not, you could always ship in, give us a call or email ahead of time, and all that information is on our website. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell icon to be notified when new videos are posted and are out. Especially, again, I still have yet to make a video at the time of the recording, I keep repeating that, about treating oiled leather, CXL leather, push-up leather. It's got 100 different names basically for it, but we'll talk about it in that particular video. So just if you're interested in finding out what the maintenance and care on things like this, what we recommend at least, that's why you want to hit that notification bell icon to know when things are coming out. So again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.